I just realized I didn't turn on my microphone. So, okay, Marie, can you hear us? I spoke some, but I just realized it wasn't recorded. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
I assume you could, if you don't say anything. Marie?
Yes. Hello?
Now it's on, my microphone.
Hello.
My speaker is off. You're right. You're right. Okay. Anyways.
Hello?
Okay. So let's continue. So yeah, ask questions when you have. So anybody doesn't know about HTML and CSS. So everybody knows something. Okay.
Yeah, maybe the abbreviations, we know what it is called.
Okay. So abbreviation. So who can tell me what is abbreviation, since you mentioned it? What is HTML?
Hypertext markup.
Okay. What does that mean?
To take and put inside something.
Okay, so basically, so you can see a picture I shared here, right? Okay, so who knows what is the abbreviation for CSS? Okay, so you know the abbreviations already, and if you look at the picture, can you tell me, like, if I have to think about it more, like, less abstractly, which one is HTML and which one is CSS?
The middle one is HTML.
No, actually, first one is CSS and second one.
So combined together, it become HTML plus CSS, right? So the first human being, right? So it's actually the same. So when we think about HTML, we think about a skeleton. So your web page, a skeleton, or a tree. It has like a lot of like leaves and branches, and every leaf has its like sequence. If you picture a tree in your head. And then CSS is the decoration we put on top. So how it should look like, just like a human being, like you need to have muscles, you have like different size of eyes and everything. And then you compose into your final outlook. So that's also how a web page look like. So if we take off CSS, it will look like the middle one. It's completely just a skeleton. And then when you put on the CSS, then it converts into our human being. Maybe a bit more close than that, of course. Okay, so if we're going to be a little bit more technical, so about coding, half of your time, I'm just like saying in average, more than half of your time is not writing code, it's about reading. You will read a lot of documentations, you will read a lot of other people's code and curse about it. That was kidding. So you will read a lot and you will think a lot, and then you write your code. If you write the code 80% of the time, you're either a genius or who are you? So yeah, so let's so whenever I have questions about web, I go to MDN, like Mozilla. Yes. Yeah, because they have the most authoritative documentation about everything regards to HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and everything about web. So here.
I mean, after the class, that's okay.
I can even just give you this link. Hello. Okay, I will give you this Notion page. It has a lot of links that I prepare the class for. Okay, so if you need, you can just go in. So here it says, like, of course, the abbreviation that you just mentioned. And it says it's not a programming language, it's a markup language. I mean, markup, how do I say, what is markup? I actually don't know. What is markup?
Markup means that it's not going like programming language to another program that is making it like one language that it is automatically coming up. when you're writing, the
Mm-hmm.
browser can read it and make it pictures or what you think to HTML.
Mm-hmm.
It's making for you the
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
background.
That probably does not need to go to the server, but it's just working from the internet
Mm-hmm.
browser.
Well, so if you don't understand it, you know who to go to. Okay, let's go. So it says it's a markup language that tells a web browser how to structure the web page you visit. So like we just mentioned, it's a tree, right? It's a structure. You can also say it's a house or whatever that needs a structure. So you can see here, it gives a very simple example. This is just text. Whereas this is already HTML because they added the tag. We call it, so all the wrappers around your text or your another HTML tag is basically look like this. It's called tag. So this is a very, very simple explanation. So if you want to go deep, read the documentation. But what I want to show you is how the structure look like. So here, like it gives a very simple web page. I mean, you don't see this kind of web page anymore. If anybody can make this kind of web page, I would ask how old he is or she is. But you can see that it's a very simple one. So this is a header, and you have the main section that you put like content in, and you have a side menu, and then you have a footer, right? So this is a very simple page you can see mostly every day. And then it will look like this. This is too much. God damn it. Okay, here actually. So basically, if we look at this one, we can analyze how it's structured, and it's basically like this. You have header here, and you have navigation bar like here, and then you have the main section, and you have the side bar, and then you have the footer. So this is the structure of HTML. Is that understandable? And regarding the tree, let's just go real quick. This is a draw by myself. Don't despise it yet. So I was showing it here. So when I make a page, I would make a header like so, and then throw in a navigation. So it's called the tag. It's called nav, and then I will have a main page. No, not main page. The main section tagged with main. This one I haven't changed yet, but it's also just a side. And then the footer is also just a tag. You've done your the first work you did before you entered the school is like your own page, right? So you know this bit of thing, but maybe you were doing it with a lot of diffs. Anybody was doing a lot of diffs? Okay, it's fine because we're gonna learn something better. So yeah, so a lot of pages like from the old time, from HTML4, it's mostly diffs all around. You can see a tree, a very long chain, and div all the way down, because that's the easiest one. It's because div as a tag, as an HTML tag, is most generic. There's no meaning, there's nothing. But then from HTML5 onwards, there's a semantic tag. What does it mean by semantic? Semantic as a word. So it's yes, more like pointing to language. I mean, so as a good developer, what I do is I check. So semantic means relating to meaning in language or logic. So basically means like this part of language, it has its own meaning, except for like just does something. So what is semantic HTML? Like I showed you before. So I can put everything like the header in the div, navigation in the div, sidebar in the div, main in the div, everything in the div. But then that's not semantic. Versus if I put everything in a more semantic tag, for example, like a header should be in header and navigation should be in nav, and main, like everything. You can check what semantic, you can check the list of semantic tags if you want in MDN, but we're not gonna do it right now. But why do we need to write semantic HTML?
Semantic is like the order that you build your page. Yes, the order. First the header, second.
Why?
It's easier to change.
It's actually easier for CSS to form it in the location or in the place where you want to put it, because when you use div and you have to arrange the size, some of the tags do not really help you in the right way to work. But with semantic, it's already ordered that the first thing what comes up is your header, then it's your navigation bar, and that's how you cemented your way how it needs to look outside.
I'm just gonna let everyone have a saying. She did first. Sorry? Hierarchy to code.
I think if you write code in semantic way, it's easy for debugging. If you have like 1,000 or 2,000 code, then you can go to the direct to the session, then you can edit or check.
Debugging?
I was going to say
U plus one.
yeah, it's easy to debug and it's easy to read.
Okay, so I mean, you are almost all right. I mean, there's no wrong answer, because like anything you see the benefit is a benefit for you. But most importantly, is to improve accessibility. Do anybody know what is accessibility for web?
It was mentioned in the materials you provided.
No, I jumped.
It was mentioned that for search engines, it's much better if you tag an element with a semantic.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure why. Maybe we will tell.
Yes.
Cross-platform.
Okay, so she mentioned that it helps search engine optimization, and that's correct, because for the browser, if you put everything in div, it kind of like the browser also just reads your HTML, right? So it doesn't know like, okay, I see the keywords, but if other page has the semantic tag, for example, the navigation, they already put in they put their navigation in the nav tag, and then there is keyword, then that will be optimized, more prioritized. Then you just like have a complete divs, right? Because like for the browser to understand it, that's for one. And then it improves accessibility. What is accessibility? It's for us, we don't have any problem of seeing or listening or whatever. But for people who doesn't have vision or very weak vision, how do they surf the web? They also need internet, right? So that's where accessibility comes in. So for someone who is blind, they use something called a screen reader. It reads the whole page for that person, and then that person would like navigate with the keyboard. And then if you have the semantic tags, we will also come to the accessibility later. But if you have semantic tags, the reader can structure the page in a very more precise way, and then you will read to the person, okay, this is a navigation, instead of like list of div. So just imagine that navigation, list of navigation items, list of div, which one makes more sense, right? Okay, so let's do a very simple exercise. So if you already have this Notion page, so you will have the, so if you click on the first exercise, so all the exercise marked with a pink highlight. So this one is basically we are setting up some sort of so if you look at the link, it's still a Mozilla, and there's a zip file containing all the starting assets. Can you guys open zip file? If you can't, you should tell me so I can send you the files directly. But if you can, just like download this and then unzip it. So you should look like this at the end. Sorry? So it's in the Notion page, and then we have yeah, in Slack. So if you would go into that page and then you go into the exercise link, and then you will see this page, structuring the page of content.
And where did you download?
And in here, starting point, there's a zip file containing all the starting assets. Sorry? And sorry? So if you have problem, just tell. If you're ready.
So you go to browser develop game.
Yeah. So if you would, so from Slack, I basically use all the MDN material.
Yeah.
So from Slack, you will have a link. If you go to Slack, so you see that there's a Notion page, right?
Okay.
And if you will go in the Notion page, okay, I need to share again.
The first thing, yeah?
Yes, so in the HTML section, there's an exercise called structure the HTML with semantic tags.
Yeah.
Okay, and then you just download it. It's in the starting point. You download it, you unzip it, and you will see something like this with all the files.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then what you need to do is use your editor to use the editor. So you probably want to right click and then open with Visual Studio Code. And then you will see the HTML. I just realized that I haven't explained the head and body. Do you guys know? Okay, people, when you haven't done, maybe like just give me 1 minute to ask a question. Do you guys know what is head tag and what is body tag?
Yes.
What is head tag? Head.
That doesn't contain in the page. It's where we can find the search bar. And body is what we write. Actually, we see on a page.
What about that island? Anybody knows? Do you know what is head and what is body tag? There's only one question. So what is head tag and body tag in your HTML? So you have head and body. I want to know that island, the furthest island. So do you know what is head and what is body? What is head?
We divided each web page into different parts. The head and the body. The head includes HTML sources and, for example, the language, some information about the body.
So head includes all the metadata. Remember this, metadata. What is metadata? It's something that doesn't really render, doesn't really do like the actual thing, but it's the knowledge. It's the knowledge of your HTML. You got that? So if you look, my picture, my person, picture. So if you look at this one, everything here, so metadata is inside of this person's head. It does not show you. It doesn't show anything on the surface. And then body is actually, I mean, the body is actually including the look of the head, but like body is everything that actually shows. So that's the only thing that you need to remember.
It's also used for doing CSS at one point. If you don't
That's
have
also,
another CSS
yes,
editor,
yes, yes.
then
That's
you also put
mhm.
the styling in the head,
Mhm.
and so basically what it executes is depending on what you write there.
Mhm.
Few of the tags that you write are not going to be visible. Even the styling that you do, it's just going to show up on the position. But yeah, that's about it.
So you can also put style there, but we will get there later. So now just have you guys already got the files? Okay, so the requirement. Okay, listen to the requirement. I'll give you 10 minutes to finish it. Requirement is add the semantic tags. So now if you look at it, it's all about like very generic tags. It's divs, either divs or like anchor tag or like whatever. So I want you to add semantic HTML. 10 minutes. It's too long. At 5 minutes, I will start checking. If you
Need to what?
add semantic HTML. So if you open it with your editor, you can see the code already.
Yeah.
Okay, I borrow you mine.
Oh, we need to add semantic.
Yes, add semantic tags to that HTML. Can you open the file? Yes, you can. Yes. So you see that there's no semantic HTML. So what you need to do is like add into the HTML, the semantic HTML into this file.
Zoe. Zoe.
In charge of this item. This is to add it. So, okay, you have the file open.
No, I have my, I need this like my email because this is here.
Okay. What you can do is just go to a MPN because I got everything from MPN, so it's very simple.
My mom's and I'm so.
You don't, again,
No.
I know you are.
It's like, oh, why did I miss getting mine? Because I wanted to get this.
Hello?
G is not here.
Oh, just stop sharing, stop sharing, stop recording. Yes.
Someone called you.
Someone called me?
Yeah.
Where? So stop sharing.
Hello? It's me, Zoe.
Ah, yes.
I can't follow. I don't know what to do. I can't follow.
So if you go to Slack channel,
Yes.
you have the Notion link, right?
Yes.
And if you go to the Notion link,
Yes.
you see in the HTML part, you will see pink highlighted exercise.
Yes.
You go to the link,
Mm-hmm.
and then you go into like there's a starting point. There's a zip file.
Is it the first exercise?
Yeah, it's called structuring the page of content. The first exercise.
structure the page with content.
Yeah, and then you just download that zip file, and you open the HTML.
Is this
What you need to do?
structure the HTML with semantic? No.
Yes.
Okay.
If you go into it, you will go into Mozilla page, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and then it's a starting point. Under it, there's a zip file containing all the starting assets.
Yeah.
Yes, download that and then unzip it. Then you open the HTML.
Yes.
Yes, and then you just like, what you need to do is make that HTML file into semantic HTML, because now it's not semantic.
Okay.
Okay.
But I also need to see the output in order to know which part is part of the footer.
Yeah, and that's where the live server, yeah, live server. Not even. Live server, yes. Yes. And what you can do is, although I don't.
No, I need this.
Okay. So once you install, you can actually. Maybe just like say restart start again. Yes. So what is a semantic HTML? You still remember? So, like I said, like the HTML you can use divs everywhere. So that's theoretically. Yeah, and the browser will still be able to read it. But we want to make it more semantic, so the screen reader can also like understand the context. And as, also the SEO can be better. So, for example, navigation should be nav tag, and then the header should be in header tag. Footer should be footer tag. And then your main section should be in main tag. So that's the semantic HTML. You need to add something.
Okay.
Yeah, you need to add semantic HTML into your HTML.
Do like commenter or like text. It's coming like text or
It's tag. It's tag. Yeah, not comment. It's tag.
Okay.
So add semantic HTML tag.
No, it still doesn't come over.
Okay. I mean, you don't really need to. You can also just. Okay, you know what? I'm gonna use my usual thing. This is not like really CSS 5. But the thing is like your navigation should be it's not the whole thing. So you just need to use the header. Yes, the nav. And the name is correct. Yeah, I think you usually pretty well, except for like maybe we can also put the, for example, like these are links. I think we can also put in the site. So if you use the page, it should look like main session and then the side menu. Okay, that's fine. There's no right or wrong. As long as you add semantic HTML, it's already better than this all the way. If you don't get it, he gets it. Now you just go to him and then let him teach you. So okay, you have a one-on-one. So and when your neighbor knows how to do stuff, just ask the neighbor. Okay. Now we can just work with you. Okay, so I just open it in the workspace. What you can do is you right click. Now it's working. Maybe you should like restart your you don't? So if you, I mean, semantic. So what is the semantic HTML? So what is this part? You also have Nash. Okay, so you don't need articles. So article is things that you can read. So for example, like those ones can be article, but and then also the navigation usually is also in the header. Because you see the header usually also and your navigation. Usually it's a part of the header. So I would put the navigation also inside of this header. And yes. So this makes more sense. Okay. If you haven't finished it, it's fine. It's what? What is so main means the content that you can look at. This one, don't you think they do more like navigation? So jump to different pages, right? So they should be actually in the, so if you imagine the page, it should be on top, right? Not like the content part. Yeah, they should be the navigation. Main, so if you look at the page, the main is the page you actually read. So if you look at the page, so these are the things you actually read, right? Yeah. Okay, anyways, I'm just gonna, okay, guys. Can I have my computer back?
It's already recorded.
It's all recorded? Okay. Guys, if you haven't finished, it's fine, because I just want you to have a feeling. Not that you have to know how to do it or how to even do it correctly right now, okay? So, Yana will post Yana will post more the better or the answer that is kind of expected later. So don't worry about it right now. We just continue with the class, okay?
Okay.
Yeah, just dump it for now. Let's continue. And then if you don't understand, so when it's on you now. So when you look at Yana's code, you don't understand or you think you have different opinion, talk to Yana.
Okay.
Okay, let's continue. So there's another concept that I want you to kind of remember, kind of like understand, remember. So, sorry, I'm not sharing my screen. Where's sharing my screen?
Share screen in the middle.
Hmm?
The green one.
This is what you're
Ah,
sharing.
right. Okay, if I have to conclude what is semantic HTML, is that like when you look at the page, you need to think of what is that function. So just now I see that some people, some of you like didn't understand the basic concept. Like, so if you look at page, you usually look at like this kind of a structure, right? And you see like the list, like a bunch of list items that goes to different page. And what is the function of that list? You need to ask yourself. And then the answer is the answer will decide what you do with it, right? So when I look at the list of things that I can click on and then go to different pages, I think that is a navigation, correct? That's the most natural thing to think. Mm-hmm.
So what actually happened after we define, for example, footer or something,
Mm-hmm.
header?
Mm-hmm.
Should we define something as characteristics of this footer, or is it already defined? I mean, for example, what actually happened after we defined footer? Because when
there's
I
no
defined, footer,
you cannot see it. You don't see it from your page.
It didn't happen something.
No, it doesn't. So visually, nothing happens because it's you to add the semantic, add the meaning into your HTML. Is that understandable? So for example, like if you name yourself something, king, and king means better than queen, nothing happens. You just named something. You just named yourself, and you put a meaning into that name. That's it. So semantic HTML doesn't change your page. It works. I mean, it works as a div, like under the hood. It's the same. You just add that section, add that box into your page.
It is a kind of box.
Yeah, it's also a box. Everything is box in the web. But it does tell the screen reader better information. That's for one, and it also improves your page's SEO. So just remember that when you add a footer into your footer, it doesn't do anything, but it's more readable for anyone else. It's also more readable for screen reader, and it's more readable for the browser.
Right, but it doesn't happen, for example, if we define incorrectly header instead of footer.
Mm-hmm. Nothing happens.
Nothing
The page will not break.
Okay.
And HTML is very tolerant. Even if you don't close your HTML, you still get the render. It won't even complain. But the thing is, like, it's very bad. Okay.
I have a different question.
Yes.
Apart from also putting the tags, is indenting important now, or we can wait before we talk about it?
Indenting is very important if you want to read your own code after 3 days.
So is there one example that you can show how, if in the same code, when we are adding these new tags, like the nav and the main and the footer and the header, how important it is to make sure how do you start indenting when you add something in the middle of a code?
Okay, so we have an example here in MDN. So you can see, like, we have HTML, and we have this part is also important to tell the doc type. And also you would probably also add a page the default language here as well. But you always start with this one, and then HTML and head, body. So we talked about what is head and body, metadata for head. Just repeat it. And you can see that they actually did it quite well, because after head, they have one like blank line, and then they start body. So it's like a division. So you can see that is head, this is body. And then inside of the body, you can see again the header with the header, and then it's separated from the nav. I mean, I think I told some of you I would put the nav in the header, but there's no right or wrong. It's mainly how you decide what, for example, what the browser should look at your page, what the screen reader should listen to your page, okay? And then you see that, like, they just basically put a blank line, a line to separate each section, you see? So this is not mandatory, but if you want your code to be easier to read, like more readable, then you should think of like how you want to look at your own code and how others should look at your code. So here you see like there's a main, and then he even put some like some comments just to state what this is for. And then you see that, I mean, this is a little bit, I would say a little bit too much, but you can always do like this, or you can, what I would do is I will group H2 and P, and then apply empty line. Then I will group H3 and PP. So I would group it into section, just like how you want your page to render. So it's the same. This again, it's not mandatory. It's only about how you want your code to be read. And then you see that he has a side, and then he split into H2 plus a list. And then again, like this is the footer. So I would say this is a pretty clean code if I look at it. So you just need to grasp how other people do their code and then just learn from it. Okay, let's continue. So next will be area label. I want to be like very quick. I'm just going to show you 2 examples so you can get an idea. So first of all, what is area label? What is area? Area includes label and the row and everything. Area is again something to improve the web accessibility. So what does it mean? Let me just show you. So let's
Accessibility.
we can look at it. So accessible reach internet applications. It's a set of attributes. The most important concept here is a set of attributes. So actually, okay, actually this part we haven't covered. So we know that like there are, the HTML is made of different tags. And within the tag, you sometimes see this kind of thing, like an ID, a class, and then these are like areas. So, but like this, you probably don't see that much. But what are those within your tag? Yeah, these are called attributes. So your HTML attribute. So what is attribute? How you describe something, right? So I also have like, so I would, so Yana has the attribute of you're Russian, right? Yeah, so she, nationality equal to Ukraine. So that's her attribute. So your HTML also has like attribute. You would put like ID, the most basic one, ID, class, and then something else. So you describe your
property.
You can find a lot if you want, but I'm just giving you an idea. So you can find a lot, but like attributes is the things that you use to describe your tag, period.
It's basically to identify something specifically.
Identify is one thing, but like most important is describing what things it has, describing. Because like, for example, nationality equal to Ukraine. It can be for another Ukrainian, right? So class equal to navigation A, but you can also put it somewhere else, right? So it's description. Okay, so area is the attributes used specifically for accessibility to describe your HTML tags in a more accessible way. So for example, here there's an example. This div, it has a row of progress bar. So when people who doesn't have like good vision, when they listen to your website, the screen reader will describe this div as a progress bar. And then you see that it also says like area value now. So these are all can be like defined by yourself. It's not like set in stone. You have to do this or that. it's all like depending on you, what information you want to put in your tags, okay? So here that you just put in a bunch of different things, but you just need to understand what is ARIA. I mean, if you don't do it, I mean, no one's gonna kill you, except for blind people. They probably want to kill you a lot when they go to your website. And also, when you work in a company, maybe the company doesn't require you to do so until they get lawsuits. Okay, let me just show you some examples. It's gonna be 3 minutes in total, so don't worry.
Multi-tiered menu from JavaScript heading level 1. Blank. This example demonstrates how to create a multi-tiered menu using nothing but JavaScript. Blank. Show menu button. Enter. Communication same page link. Wrapping to top. List of 4 items. Wrapping to top. List of 4 items. Bullet same page link communication. Bullet link shopping. Bullet link entertainment. Bullet same page link information.
So you see, like, this is a very, okay, the idea is like, it doesn't tell much. It's using your very unsemantic HTML. So this page is definitely made of like a bunch of like just divs and then anchor tags and list items. That's it. It doesn't tell what is the intention of this part of your HTML. Let's look at a better example, good example. So this is how blind people visit your page. That's what they don't see anything. They just like hear stuff. Where's my book? Okay.
Going to take a look at ARIA document landmark role. Accessible Rich Internet Applications, ARIA, is a new specification from the W3C that helps to make websites and web applications easier to use by people with disabilities. Screen readers provide a range of shortcut keys that make it easier for people to move from one piece of content on a page to the next. For example, with the JAWS screen reader, you can use the L key to move from one list on the page to the next. So here, we move to the list in the banner area of the Namensa homepage.
List of 2 items.
Next, we move to a list that contains all the navigation links for the website.
List of 7 items.
Although it's a very convenient way of moving around the page, it doesn't really provide much information about the purpose of content when you reach it. ARIA landmark roles really help to bridge this gap. JAWS uses the semicolon key to move from one landmark on a page to the next. As each landmark area is reached, JAWS announces the purpose of the content it contains. So we can move from the banner area of the page,
Banner landmark,
to the search area,
search landmark,
to the navigation area,
navigation landmark,
to the main content area of the page,
main landmark,
and finally to the footer.
content info landmark.
ARIA landmark roles are really simple to add to your page. There's a link in the video description area to an article on the humanizing technology.
Okay, so do you get the idea? So with ARIA, without ARIA, makes a lot of difference for a screen reader. Okay, so that's the part I want to talk about ARIA. So now I will skip the exercise for now because I'm afraid of time. Yes? Voice reader? So here, I was showing this example. Can you see? Okay, so if you look at this set of div, it adds row progress bar And then also add some like, so this is the progress, like the now current value is 75, is from 0 to 100. So when the screen reader reads this one, it will tell you this is a progress bar, and now the progress goes on to 75. No, this is just, like I said, so these are area attributes. It describes the intention for the screen reader. So you can definitely go on the W3C's page to see what kind of area labels they recommended you to use. But that's a homework, not now. Okay. And also, like, the goodness of you knowing those accessibility is that, like, because accessibility nowadays is increasingly important, many companies got sued because they don't care about accessibility. And if you know about it, if you do it, you are doing good for the society, you are doing good for your company, you are doing good as a human being. Okay, so now let's continue with the CSS. So we already have a very raw page. Let me just open it. Come on. Hmm? Okay. Seems like my computer is a bit slow. It's fine. I just opened way too many stuff. At 2. If you want to go to the toilet, you can just go. Yeah. Yeah. But like we have lunch at 2. So hold your stomach. Okay, so we already have HTML. Looks like this, right? I believe on your phone, your computer looks not much different. So this is a very raw.
The nav bar, what should the difference be?
Nothing.
That's okay. So
because okay, semantic HTML doesn't change your HTML. It's also under the hood, it's just a div. But it adds meaning. That's it. It doesn't change your stuff. But you always need to remember it's a div under the hood, so it adds one wrapper. Okay? So now we haven't styled it yet. So now we want to understand a bit more about CSS. So we actually, so if you look at your code, if you look at your download package, I mean the unzipped one, you already have a style.css, right? Yeah. But it's not really doing anything to the page. Why is that?
You should relate.
Because browser
you
must
need
read
to
it.
put the link in the HTML head to read it.
Okay, so to conclude from your 4 is because you haven't linked the CSS style sheet to your HTML, right? Okay, so how do I link it? You have done it before, so I assume some of you knows. People who haven't said anything in that island, you, my classmate. How do I link the CSS style sheet to your HTML? Okay. So I am in my HTML. So what do I do? You tell me. Mm-hmm. Link.
Link real style sheet.
Real.
Type CSS text.
What?
Type CSS text slash text. Sorry.
The name of the file.
Is
okay,
it?
It's real.
Okay, can you see my screen?
No, without I see the screen.
Okay. Okay. So can you just write that in Slack and then just copy paste?
Okay, I write it.
And for everyone else, you can already secretly do it on your computer because you also have the same HTML and style sheet. So try to link it.
how to do it.
Marie, are you asking something?
Yes, I'm asking how to do that.
Yeah, if you don't know, just wait for it, because like now I'm testing one of the classmates and then also testing everyone. So whoever who doesn't know how to do it, just wait for it.
Okay.
Actually, I am hungry. I am hungry.
We can go a little bit earlier.
Yeah, I want to cover this bit of stuff, so we have a lighter class later on. Can you also just like change that page into a semantic one and then just post it? Yeah.
But there is some answers in you sent the right one.
The what?
You showed the right one.
I didn't show the right one. I almost showed the right one, but I don't remember. I closed all my pages. I haven't got anything yet.
We can send it if you want.
Oh no, I'm waiting for him. Because like I just want to see like if he understands it.
By the way, I put
Yeah, I see it.
CSS is the same folder. Everyone do that.
Well, we will soon know, right? Okay, it seems like it's not working.
Because for me, I put both of them in the same.
That's why it's not working. Okay, I think that's the reason. Wait, is it? No, this is not reason. Not the reason. This doesn't make sense.
The others, what is called?
Style CS text. This doesn't look wrong.
Here you must
This looks right. But I don't know why my CSS sheet is not like it's not highlighted.
I'm trying to.
Yes, this one. You must all this. Yeah, you can put all this to your copy. So I mean that this picture is not coming.
But that's not required.
Okay.
You only need the style.
Yeah, it's correct.
Only just
Yeah,
copy style.
I'm putting this.
You don't even need to put underside. Just go back, just copy the name.
Huh. Wait, I got it.
Is it wrong CSS or what?
I think the CSS is correct, but I don't know why my CSS is not like highlighted. Can you do it? Is it linked?
I just have a lot of different folders. I just cannot send if it's the right
Maybe that's why.
Give me something like this, but I don't know why.
What if I just don't have type at all?
It's maybe because photos, maybe they need something.
and probably you can also like pass from the same folder. Because it's just a name, I think.
What do you?
Here, like stuff, like you usually have to write a pass, like this folder, like those.
Wait, that's okay because I think because of this. Okay, guys, are you done?
Yeah. Which is your default browser? Which is your
CSS text. Text CSS. Okay. Yeah, it's hyperref, not ref. Okay. If you're not done, it's okay. Let's just continue. Okay. So basically, what I did, okay, what he sent me didn't work. I'm not trying to shame you. I'm actually shaming myself because I didn't realize. That's not fair. It wasn't working on my computer. Okay. Doesn't matter. Okay, so if you would look at my computer, oh no, can you see?
How should your output look?
Look like. I mean, it's still broken, but it's because because we changed. So it doesn't matter because as long as you have colors, that means your CSS is working. Okay. The reason why it's not rendered correctly is because we just changed our HTML into a different structure. We added some semantic tags, remember?
Yes.
So it's okay. Don't worry about it. So yeah, so if you can make your page at least have color, that's already success. So yes.
Okay, maybe I didn't say. I just because type text CSS. Now when I sent it for you first time. It's the first CSS text. The next type text.
So Marie, if you would add the one that I mark, what's that called? A check mark into your HTML head, then you would also have it succeed. So if yours is not working, if yours is not working, try to copy paste Gary's tag and put it into the head. Yeah, it may very well be that tag has some issue.
No, he's not just written the tag.
Ah, okay.
So we will just run.
Yeah.
Your tag is still working.
Yes.
You probably
You got it? Yeah, into the head. Try to save it and then refresh the page. How do you open your page? When did you install the live stream? I don't know how to use live stream.
Why yours is different and mine is
Right. What? The difference. You put these things I didn't put. Navigation.
Okay, just open it from the folder then.
I tell you when we do lunch. Yeah, actually.
Yes, you have colors.
No, but yeah, because you're done. It's good.
Always have like space. Don't put everything in one.
I will show you in the break.
But it's why it's not
Because I not structure this.
Right, have two extra.
I not put it right.
Try to just copy paste from the.
We were only supposed to do.
And then you just open your HTML in your browser. Okay, so yeah, everybody's full.
No, I'm done. But he needs help with semantic, if you can explain. Because he didn't put the semantic tag before because his system was not working at that time.
that's already one link. You create your own link here because every link is something you don't use everything you want. When you have so this is already one step. You don't have to just add another one. Copy paste the link. Don't do anything.
I added what they said.
You need to have a site and don't leave it.
Really?
Because you all change your HTML in your Okay, let's continue. And then someone still has issue. If you don't raise your hand, that's serious. Okay, it's cool.
Now, for class,
This is correct.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, so later on, you just refresh your site, you change something, that's also okay. That server only helps you to connect it like automatically, but you can do it manually as well. We'll cover that a bit later. Yes?
Okay,
is it just driving you when you nothing? Even if I put the header or the nav bar, what is supposed to actually do? Just a line or
Doesn't do anything. If you don't style it, it's just a div. Just remember, every tag is like a wrapper. If they are not the input or something, it's just a wrapper. It adds one layer. That's it. Doesn't do anything. Okay. Okay, let's continue. So, okay, people, attention, attention. So I just want to cover a bit more about like selectors. Then we go for lunch, okay? So you have done your entry work. So you probably already styled your HTML already, right? So what is selector? What is CSS selector? From the concept point of view, what is CSS selector? Mm-hmm. So it's basically the way you select your HTML, right? Yes, so class, ID, or tag, right? So you basically, you write, for example, if you put a class name, I don't know, like nav bar, and then you in the CSS style sheet, you just start into the nav bar and then give it a color red. Then you will be rendered as red text, right? So that's called selectors. So there are like the selectors basically it's like the pointer. It's like a pointer to your HTML. So you already know the basic ones: IDs, classes, and the tags. So do you understand the tags? How to select your tag? Use tag. So with classes you use dots, right?
yes.
What is how do you select your IDs? Mm-hmm. So with how do you select an HTML tag? Yes. So you just say if it's H1, you just say H1, right? So that's the basic ways to select you to point to your HTML from CSS point of view. And but you also see things like this. Can you see it? Okay, let me just big enough. Okay, so you sometimes see also like this, kind of like they just put this is a class, and this is another class, and then they put it together. What does it mean?
It means from this class, this particular class is where we are targeting to.
Balance and try.
Have the same values or same styling.
I want to mention that the class is a red color, which has a class text into red color.
So in a very, very simple concept, it changed the class, right? So if you would have a red color, so for, imagine I'm the browser. So you are starting the red, this class, red color, and then, so I will find the red color first, right? I will find the red color everywhere. And then I see, oh, you want to get into, so the what's it called, like descendant, well, not descendant, but also it could be someone who both has like red color and text. So I will try to find both of them. It can be class, this red color that has text, or the red color within the tree, within the red color tree, and there's a text, and then I just target that one, right? So this is how browser try to locate your selectors. And versus what is with this comma here?
Both of them.
Yes. So the previous one is the child. I mean, not necessarily child. I would also say it could be the same one that has both. But in general term, it's the child. And then this one is more like, I want to style all my red color and all my text class with some class styles. So this is kind of like the difference. And we also have the other two, a bit more complex. Okay, so for the child one, and also this kind of like what's called like siblings, or not siblings, but like just selector combined. You can also do like H1P or H1, P. It's the same. Like so H1P. Then you will look into like there's find the H1, then find the P that is within the H1, and then target that P, right? Or you do H1, P. Then you will find the H1 and find P, and then do the styling like all over.
But so especially for the single tags, which are like H1 or P, we can also class them or do an ID and then use it as well.
Yes, I'm just,
which
yeah.
is a better option?
That we will cover later. It's about the specificity, but just to understand this part. So what does this mean? How do the browser try to find all these selectors you named? And there are two more things. One is called pseudo class, and one is called pseudo element. So sometimes, so what is a pseudo class? So we know what is class. What is pseudo class? Pseudo class points to, for example, like the behavior. So for example, here I have an example of a pseudo class, like the class, the same class, red color, and I have a column, and then I have a hover. So this is like kind of a state. Do you know what is state?
Yeah.
When you
explain.
State. When you have mouse over the link, it is hover.
So when your mouse is hovering on some HTML, it changes into the hover state. When you are clicking, then it changes into focus state. And then you release, right? And then after you release, you will change into visited state. So state is like status. It changes over time. Like when you start like more advanced stuff, the state will come back to you again. But here we just consider that like as a HTML tag, you might have different states when the user does something. Okay. So for example, like another example would be if your input, if the user hasn't touched your input, it's still clean. And then when the user types something into your input, then your input is dirty. I know it sounds like actually weird. Still for me it's weird, but like once it's getting touched, once it's being touched, then it's dirty. So that's a state of your input, okay? So here, the pseudo class is basically, okay, let's just go into more like, more developer would do, find the documentation. So this is a very important habit that you need to cultivate. Whenever you touch some concept you don't understand, you don't know, go into documentation. So you have more like better understanding and also more authoritative understanding. So here it says, what is pseudo class? Okay, let me just enlarge it. A pseudo class is a selector that selects elements that are in a specific state. For example, they are hovered or blah, blah, blah. This is not like very human language. So the thing is like when you read the documentation, sometimes the language is not very English. So you need to maybe go into the example or everything to actually get to understand it. So here we have some example. So if you look at this, this example, can you see it? I have 2 paragraphs, right? And then the first paragraph, I have a class first. And then this is style sheet. It's being styled as like 120% font size and bold font weight. So if you look at the render effect, this is the first paragraph and this is second. And the first one is like bolder, right? And if we go into here, so you see, okay, so also include like first child. So the same HTML, 2 paragraphs, right? And then the style sheet now becomes article. This is our HTML tag again. And then article P. So what is article P again? So just space P.
Semantic paragraph.
Yeah, P inside of paragraph. Okay. So and then after P, this is something new for us. This is a pseudo class. It's called first child. What does that mean?
The first paragraph is what it is trying to focus on.
Mm-hmm. So basically you see the same, I mean, the style is the same, and then it selects the same thing as the previous one.
Yeah.
So, sorry? Yeah, so basically here, what it means is like the first one, basically, because like it already goes into child. So P as the first one. So it's kind of like, I mean, I wouldn't say this is against state. I think that it has more explanation. So, oh, okay, specific, okay, this also counts as state. So select elements that are in a specific state. Example, they are the first element of their type, or they're being hovered over by the mouse pointer. Okay, so if you don't understand it, come back to the documentation and understand it like again. So we kind of got the idea of a pseudo class. Do you? If you don't, just say it. Okay, if you don't, you can also secret tell me. And then we have another one. It's called like pseudo element. So what is it? So if you just look at these 2 examples, what's the difference you see? Yeah, so there are 2 columns, right? So that's kind of a signal of this is being a pseudo element. And then we go to documentation and see. So pseudo classes, it's also including, okay, so anyways, let's just continue with the pseudo element. Okay, so pseudo elements behaves in a similar way as pseudo class. However, they act as if you had added a whole new HTML element into the markup, rather than applying a class to existing elements. So when we look at the pseudo classes, it's like it's kind of like selecting the existing classes, right? It's just like they're in maybe different states. But pseudo element is just like, it's as if you're adding a new thing. I mean, this is a pretty abstract for myself, actually. But like, if we look at the example I gave you here, have you ever done this before? I mean, before.
I've read about it.
You said yes. Can you tell us what did you do?
Yeah, for example, you want to add a blue box before the paragraph. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So you put key column before, and then you go to the CSS and you define the color of that pseudo element, which is going to be the key in here, and you put a blue box with the color blue, and the summit, of course, the big summit, and you put a blue box before the paragraph that you had before. If I explain.
Okay, let me. I will show you a very simple example. So we have. Okay, let me just remove. Make it as simple as possible. So we have a paragraph hover over me, correct? And then if I would do do you see anything changed?
Yes.
I added a no way here, right? I mean, it could be anything. Okay, no way. So it's basically you just added like a HTML structure out of nowhere, correct? So this is like very useful when you want to add something, but you don't want to change your HTML. You want to add something into your flow, your HTML flow. So this is called like pseudo element. It's like it's an element, but it's not there if you check your HTML structure. And there are something like that. Actually, like it's kind of like different, but I haven't understand myself. So, for example, you can also say first line, but actually, what it does, it doesn't really add a first line. It just selects that first line. But that's another story. You can check all these pseudo classes and pseudo elements in MDN, and then try to use it later. But this is the concept I want to tell. If you have questions, you can ask during lunch or after class or anytime. So now we just go for lunch. Go for lunch. What is breakout room?
It's for creating, like, when you want people to do exercises in groups.
Aha.
Then you create breakout rooms.
Okay. Okay, so so what I wanted to say? Okay. So I was asked one question. I think everyone wants to might be interested. So I'm just going to share a little bit. So I was asked. So how does a day look like as a developer? So what is your future basically? So how would your future day look like? So basically, many companies go with some sort of a methodology to develop. You probably have heard of like Scrum, Agile. So what it does is like it's basically just it's just like the way how you keep like milestone in your software development. So for example, like the companies I've been working with up till now is always running with going with the agile methodology. So we usually run 2 weeks of sprints. So 2 weeks as a cycle. So you will have a sprint planning. You plan what you need to achieve in these 2 weeks, and then you have a retrospective at the end of the these 2 weeks. Then you just like talk about what issue you have encountered, and then what you can improve, and what have you done, what haven't you not done. So this is like a sprint, and every day you so from the planning point of view, you already have a lot of tasks in your plate, right? So you usually use kind of some sort of software to manage your tasks, so everybody can see it, right? It can be, for example, like Jira, Trello, Clubhouse, whatever. And then what you do every day is basically you try to finish those tickets. We call it tickets. So every task is like a ticket. What you do is like you get to know in the planning phase. You already know what you need to do. What is this task about? What you need to do to achieve that? And during the week, you just code it. You have problem, then you ask relevant personnel. For example, as a front ender, as me, so I sometimes I'm missing. For example, I need to deliver a feature in the page. It can be, for example, like a login form, let's say, a login form. And I need to know where do I send that form, right? So I need to prepare that task with the relevant information. So I might talk with the backender. So what is the endpoint you're gonna provide to me? So his work. And when will that be ready? And then I do that according to we just coordinate the pace, and then we deliver that feature together. It might be my own feature, but my own task, but it can relate to other roles in your team. So usually a team is composed with front-end developer, back-end developer, your product manager, who actually has a higher overview, and product designer, who gives you the design and also the behavior, the UX. And you might also have a Scrum Master who actually does all this ceremony, for example, planning the meetings, everything. So basically every day you code some, but most of the time you're actually talking to people to get the stuff you need, because software nowadays is very complicated. So it needs a lot of collaboration. You need a lot of different resources from different people. So that's why usually you work in a relatively small team, unless you're working in a bigger corporate. But even nowadays, corporate, they try to make teams small enough so you are more, so you get to talk to necessary people easily. So communication, what Benjamin said, communication is very important, because it's not just about for your study, it's also for your work. And especially later on, when you started doing some interviews, you will realize how important it is, because the whole interview process is just basically for the interviewer, the companies, to know how you be you, how you communicate, how they can picture working with you. So I hope that answered the question. Okay, let's go back to work. So we just talked about, let's do a quick wrap up. So we talk about the HTML structure, and it's like a tree. Why is HTML like a tree? So you have a lot of HTML tags that branch out like a tree, and then every tag might have its sibling, like the sister brother, and then it looks like a whole tree structure, right? And then why do we need, what is semantic HTML? Semantic.
It's how you picturize the HTML for your screen.
It's giving your HTML meaning. Semantic. I mean, I don't want to Google again, but it gives meaning to your language. Okay. Why do we need it?
So it's easy to do SEO, and it also helps you to have accessibility.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And what is ARIA? I don't need the abbreviation. It's hard to remember. I know.
It helps you to make your code more useful or accessible for disabled people.
Yeah.
For people with disabilities.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So that island's been very quiet up till now. So next question will be from that island. It doesn't matter whom. You can even just try to fight for the answer. My question would be, okay, it's a very, very hard question. So what is a pseudo class and what is a pseudo element? Three bros should need to work together. So what is pseudo class?
It's when you're targeting a specific tag through the column.
You can give me an example if you don't look at my. Mm-hmm.
If we want to target a third paragraph in adding or in the div, then you can use the pseudo clause by using that column and by that name using nth child, like
Mm-hmm.
for example, and putting the number of the
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
it's a technique to point the specific paragraph or any tag.
Mm-hmm. Can you give me another more obvious example?
Like
I mean,
if you wanna put a word into a tag,
okay.
Use a
Mm-hmm. Okay. So what is a pseudo element? You.
Okay, so we will completely use a new language of HTML.
Mm-hmm.
You can use a pseudo.
Example? You can ask for help from your island. Example? Just what the pseudo elements example. A quick example.
If we want to add some HTML content in paragraph, then we can use pseudo element. Through that, we can add extra content into paragraph or anywhere.
Okay, so you just so basically you can just add like a before or after,
Yeah,
right?
before and after.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So the furthest person, my classmate. So what is the difference between these two, pseudo class and pseudo element? Good answer. So let's repeat because I think it's a very complicated concept, so it's fine.
But before that, I have a question regarding pseudo class and pseudo element. Can these only be used for classes that you have created, or you can also use them for IDs to have a pseudo class on them?
Good question. Do you remember my example? First of all, like not my example. This example is actually targeting elements, not class, not ID. So if you look at it,
Can we also do it for the ID?
Yes.
Yeah.
So if you can, you basically it's like why is it called pseudo? So what does it mean by pseudo?
False.
Language? Huh?
False.
Yeah. So it's like a fake, right? Yeah. So basically, from the meaning of it is like a pseudo. It's like a fake class. It's like pretending class. So you can add it into any of your selector. It just adds on something. It just adds on. How do I describe it? So, for example, here, let's just say article. I mean, this is not element art. So this will be like the first line of this art ID. And then if I say,
it will be applicable on the first line.
Yes. And then if I do it this way, so it will be before this ID art. So it's the same for the pseudo class. You can add it on any other selector. You can, okay, let me just quickly hover. So it will be the same. It will be the hover state of ID art, or directly just do article. So you basically, you select something and you go into a bit more details. You can understand it that way. So the difference, the very simple explanation is that like, so with pseudo class, it's like you're describing your selectors a bit more deeper. So it can be like,
can be addressing or referring semantics in pseudo class or pseudo parameters. I mean, semantics are working like tags or
semantic HTML is just a bunch of tags you get to write your HTML.
For example, it can be hovering navigation.
Yes.
And then, okay. So
yes. So don't think that semantic HTML too much different from any other HTML. It's still HTML. It's just like I said, under the hood is no difference between, like no difference than div, except for you add some meaning to your HTML. But like, so if you would do a header, and within the header and nav, it just means that like it's the same as like a div inside of div, except for like the meaning adding on top. There's no difference. Okay. So don't think it's too much different. It's the same thing. And then the difference between pseudo class and pseudo elements, like as the name suggests, pseudo element is adding a fake element, like just adding something onto your normal HTML flow. It's just like the example, some elements before that you add something, or after that you add something, versus pseudo class. It's just like it's like going deeper, like to describe your selector. You add like the states, how different states should look like. And then the child, like describe, so as the first child of this selector, you should look like this, for example. Okay, so I think I have, okay, now let's talk about like more abstract idea. So I want to like make the abstract idea more concrete. So we will try to work on that. Okay, so you see that I have like 3 keywords here. So we talked about what is the abbreviation of a CSS, right? Cascading. So then we look at this keyword is called like cascade. So I mean, what does it mean by cascade? It's like water flowing.
Yeah.
It's like water flowing. It just goes through, and then you don't need to really like. Okay, most important for cascade is that the order matters. So, for example, if you pour water into a jar, the first water comes first, right? The last water will come last. This is a very bad example, but the point is like the order matters. If you would, let's go into an example. Did you ask something, Mary?
No.
Okay. If you're not asking, maybe you mute. So you don't like. Yeah, whatever. Okay. So cascading. Okay. So for example, what I would do is like I would. So I just added like a red color. But what if I do? So did you see what I did? So I targeted the same selector, right? And then first of all, I say the color should be red. And then I say again, the color should be blue. So the one comes later would override the previous one, basically. It's actually very simple idea. Here it looks stupid because why would you do that? Why would you directly put a different style immediately after? Of course, like this doesn't happen that much in the real life. But the thing is, like a project's software style sheet can be huge. just imagine like thousands of styles in your style sheet. How do you know? Like sometimes you just want to override something. You don't like, you want to just change this color, but somewhere in your style sheet it says like it should be red, and then you want to change it. Then you just add it like on the bottom, so you are sure that you can override it. But actually, it's not really, unless you previously you also just selected with the article. Then when you do it again, you can override. Then we comes to the specificity. Okay, specificity. Okay, I got it. Specificity problem. So let's do another. Let's just make it a bit more interesting. Okay, so. So I will just article do P. Wow. That's why. Okay, so we just selected all the paragraphs within the article, and then style it as a color red. And what if I do? Actually, I can do it this way. So we know that the order matters, right? So you see what I did, right? Again, before I was just targeting the article, and then I try to put it, I try to start it as blue after I started as red. But this time I put the blue first, and it worked. And it worked. It didn't get override. Why is that?
The number of ID is higher than tags.
Yeah, but
the quantity of the specificity of the ID is higher than tags. So if the ID
So we come back to the specificity. It's hard. Yes. So ID. So we see that like here is like using the element selector, right? And here we select into ID. Actually, even without article, we don't do it. It's still more specific than the previous one. So in CSS, the more specific you make your selector to be, the more precedence it gets. So it's like the more detail you describe something, that something will become your description rather than someone's generic description. Is that clear? And how do you do the specificity calculation? I mean, sometimes you try to calculate it. So there's some general rules. I think like ID is 1,000 worth as like 1,000 points, and then okay, just to be more specific, just to be more rigid, let's just go on to MDN. So there are some rules that you can kind of like put in your head, and when it comes to specific, oh, actually, why do we need to know about this? You know,
so
why do I need to?
How do you put them? How do you cascade them, and what level? Which one should come first so that it is not overwritten by the second one?
That's the cascade part. But why do we need to know about specificity?
To style a particular element of a particular variable.
For example, if you have two tags with the name paragraph, right, and you just want to color the first one into a particular color, and you want to keep the second one in a regular color, then you need to specify which out of the same tags you want to target to, and the one that you want to change exactly to.
Okay, let me rephrase the question. what problem will we have if we don't know, if we don't take care of this specificity? You answer. Yes, you. You raise your hand so many times, I have to give you. Okay, so anyone would know what's the problem that we are trying to solve?
I think we have problem with the overriding. If somehow we are not able to solve a problem, which one is applying right now, which style is applying, solve it by using IDs and
I think the also other thing would be you're repeating things too many times. So for instance, the first thing what I wanted to do was to change the color, but at some point in time, I also need to change the font of that particular paragraph that I'm selecting on. So when you want to make multiple changes, you want to make sure that you give a specific class or an ID to that one where just you can go there and make the changes of what you are looking at for multiple times. That's also why you need the specificity.
Like about searching in the browser, you know, like specific ID parts, like find out specific parts of the website, or no.
Maybe to avoid inline styling.
I mean, we are talking about the problem, so it's not about a solution. So the problem is that, imagine that you have like, again, a very, very huge style sheet. And then somewhere, like you want to style a button, you want to style it into, for example, like from original color red into blue. But whatever you do, you just cannot override. That means that and then you just understand, oh, maybe I did when I started as red, I make it too specific. And then and that's the kind of like warning sign that like maybe you should have a better way to style stuff, because then you become super difficult to override your own style, right? And then you can see also sometimes in the real world, you are doing your work, you want to style something, and you just cannot override your own style, and that's where the problem, the specificity creates. And we have a lot of like methodologies in the CSS world to overcome that kind of a problem. But now you just need to understand there is problem that can be created by specificity.
Is that word you can?
That word. Okay, so yeah, here you actually have a very, very, very detailed explanation about this topic. I mean, you can also find it on MDN. Okay, so here has like a very simple example of which level is more specific than the other. So, for example, like specific.
Is that word?
The level 1. No, not this one. Where is that thing? Okay, I'm just gonna like, I forgot to like find that example, but I just imagine I'm saying the correct thing, and you can correct me later if you find the more correct one. So imagine ID is the top level, and it worth like 1,000 points, and class is the secondary level. It worth like 100 points, and then what's that? Element, HTML element is like third level, and it's worth like 10 points. And then pseudo class, pseudo element worth like the fourth level and was 1 point. So when you look at a class selector, then you just calculate. Okay, so this is like 10 points, and this is another 10, so 20 plus this class, then it's 100. So this is 120 points. You understand what I'm saying? Yeah. So you just like kind of have the idea how specific in terms of number it is, and then you can do more like then you can know how to override that. But again, like don't try to override your own style too much, because you will get lost in it. That's what happened to every developer front ender. Okay, so inheritance. We just talked about cascade, and then we talked about specificity. Ew, I made it. And then about inheritance. What does it mean by inheritance?
Taking from something. Inheriting.
Mm-hmm.
For example, child from father and mother.
Yeah. That's very literate. But it's factually true. It's factually true. So here is the same. We talked about like the HTML structure is like a tree. So it has parents, it has child, it has siblings, right? So the child can inherit the style from the parent. So for example, we have like a body, and within it there's a paragraph and some text. So if we don't style the paragraph, we just style the body color red. So what happened with the paragraph? It inherits the body's color. Because you haven't say, okay, the paragraph should be this color, right? So it inherits. So whenever you don't specify some style, it try to look up one level up. If there is anything, if it doesn't, then you look one level up again. So you just like look through the whole parent and grandparent and grandparent to find a style to render itself. Make sense? Mm-hmm. So let's just have a quick example.
Okay. If it's already inheriting, then why doing the specificity is going to help you?
Because sometimes you don't specify some styles, and then you just want to, for example, like you want the whole page's font to be roboto, but you don't go to every tag to kind of style it. You just give it whole body font roboto, and then the whole body will be roboto unless you specify otherwise into another level. Got it? Okay. Do you need an example? I mean, for me, it's pretty clear. Okay, I'll give you an example. Okay, so article. So now we have a black text, and then we just do article. So when we do article red, all the child within the article become red, unless, for example, we do I will explain why I do that. So unless you specify on the deeper level what it should be. So if I would do, so for example, like if I would add another paragraph here. What did I do? Okay.
The closing tag is
Something was not correct. I sensed it. Okay, so you see that what's going on? Wait. Something's wrong. What did I do?
You have to delete that tag P at the beginning.
And you move it
down. Exact place that your cursor is. Your cursor in the beginning of the line. You have to open.
No, that's fine. That's fine. That's fine. That's fine. Yeah. What did I do that makes
You added a paragraph before the class. Right up more. If you scroll a little bit up, yeah, you can see you added another paragraph before veggies.
Okay, let's debug it again. So what's going on here?
The paragraph is in your first paragraph, yeah.
Okay, you know what? I'm just gonna.
I think you can't put the paragraph into the.
I mean, theoretically you could, but you probably shouldn't. But anyways, let's look at this. So I just changed that into a span. It's a one important concept we didn't cover. So do you know what is like a block element and an inline element? Okay.
Inline coming in HTML.
Not that. So block element. So, so have you used the display, the style display? So by default, yeah, that's a way to understand it. So back to the display. So we usually style it like so we don't usually need to say any style this display, because by default it depends on the tag you have. So for example, a paragraph is a block element, so it has by default display block. So I don't need to say, so for example, like this paragraph, I don't need to say, god damn it, display block. I don't need to say it, but it will be a block. And then for example, the span, if I don't say, if I don't style it, by default it's inline style. What is inline style? Inline style, it doesn't take its own kind of like flow. It can just like plug into your block. So if you look at the example here, this color cannot be seen at all. Like wait, just blue. Okay, so if you see that my another paragraph, it's kind of just like inserted into my first paragraph, right? But it's different. I mean, the behavior might be similar, but a completely different concept. So inline elements, basically it's the element that doesn't take its own kind of like element flow. So for example, if I would do, so a div is a very simple example of like a block. So you see like the block takes another kind of like, it just be on its own, right? It didn't like it didn't get like inserted into anywhere else. It just started its own kind of like a place. So that's kind of like, that's kind of an idea of block. It just become a block. And versus like inline is like, it's within your block. You can put it anywhere within your block. It doesn't take its own like whole space. So here, this div, we call it block level element. Block level element. And then versus like this span is inline element.
And paragraph is inline. Paragraph.
Paragraph is a block. Yeah, because it will take its own. So if you look at my HTML, the second paragraph, it takes its own. It didn't continue after the garlic. It takes another block space. Yeah.
But why when you did when you put another paragraph in a paragraph?
It's in a span.
No, I mean when. Before the span.
If I would do that, I think it will.
But it didn't change. It just.
Okay, let's do it. Let's do it then.
P was already a paragraph, which was a block, and in that she added a span. That's why it became in line with the paragraph.
Okay, if you look at my code again, so I just changed this into. I changed the span into P, into paragraph, and then it's not inserted into the previous paragraph anymore. Have you seen that? It just started on its own space, because a block level element will always take its own like space by default.
What happens when you add the block in a div? Will it still perform like a block separately in a div?
You will be a block wrapped into a block. But like if you add another block into the same block, then you will take its own space. So imagine it's like a stone. You put the stone into a container, it will stay in that container. But if you put another one, it will stack on top. You will not just squeeze in. Yes. So that's why, like, if and then if we look at normal, so when we are putting block level elements into a page, it creates a flow, a document flow. So if you look at this kind of like documentation, this is like very simple HTML. It just like, it has a title, probably H something, and then another like paragraph and a block quotes. So it just like it just stack on top of each other, unless they need. So for example, here, there's something in line here. There's a code. It just kind of squeeze in a block, and it doesn't take its own space.
Are semantic tags also blocks?
It depends on which tag. So there are kind of like a definition for each tag. It should be block or inline. So for example, for example, like span. Span is like a, what is the meaning of span? Is a span? Sorry, I forgot. So it's a inline, because it's by default it is defined as inline. But what we programmers do is like, sometimes we just do like really like not logical thing for browser. We would specify, okay, a span display block. Then you just would turn this span, this inline element into a block element, or you do vice versa. A div is a block element. You want to say, I want that div just to be able to squeeze in another div. Then you just define it as display inline. Then it will become an inline element. So every tag by default is defined by the browser already, if it's a block or inline. But you can always change it if you have a good reason. Okay, back to inheritance. Inheritance we covered. Okay. Anything not clear up to this point? Because we just covered like very complicated. Yeah. So this cascade, inheritance, and specificity. Any questions? If no, then we will start doing some exercise. Or actually before the exercise, what is this example? I mean, I prepared myself, but I just forgot. Okay, we already covered. Okay. So you have already done, like, so when you do your entry work, entry school sort of work, you already have like styled your own HTML. So you probably already know some CSS attribute. Can you tell me a bit? Okay, wait, I have a very good idea. So from that direction, anti-clockwise, everyone say one. The CSS attribute.
CSS attribute. Just one.
Yeah, just name one. Background color. Oh. You didn't understand the question, or? Yeah. Sorry? Yeah. That is one. You said something, I forgot. Okay. Sorry? Border.
Width, margin.
No, one is enough. Don't try to steal others. Okay. Height. Yes, you.
Yeah. Transition.
Pseudo class?
No.
It's not?
No.
Today it was.
CSS attribute.
Yeah. No? Okay. Attribute. Height, right.
Oh, you already covered width.
Just support content. justify content.
Okay, he's going high level. Okay.
Padding.
Hmm?
Padding.
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 Ah, padding.
Yes.
Water staff.
Okay. So give yourself a shoulder pat. I know something. Okay, then we don't need to continue with that. But if you want to know more, you can always go back to MDN. There are hundreds of CSS attributes you can like use to style your HTML.
Are all three important? Cascading, inheritance, and also specificity in a kind of coding that you do? Do they have importance?
Let's put it this way. So if you don't go to interviews, you know how it works. You would know how it works when you just do more and more coding. But then when you go for interviews, you probably need to explain what is that, what is this, what is that. So the importance is like you need to understand those to be able to talk about it in order to get a job. Yes. There are a lot of things in our future curriculum. It's about like you would understand it by default if you keep coding. But if you cannot talk about those, explain those, then it reduces your credibility. Okay, let's continue. So, so we did this exercise before. So about linking your style sheet. So there are 3 ways to link your, to kind of like apply your style sheet. I mean, just by looking at this line, can you explain what are those? I can read it. External versus inline styles versus element style.
I think inline styles are when you mention that this is going to be a reference, and right below it you mention the width and the height, how you want it to be.
So where is it?
It's inline.
It's
in HTML.
Okay, what about
It's in the tag, but it's a kind of styling that you are doing for that tag.
I think you started within the HTML.
What about external and the elements?
CSS file where you specify just the CSS part. The element style can also be, element style is something that you put in the head.
Okay, so you're almost right. Okay, let me just explain it.
Wrong?
So first of all, external. So first of all, external style sheet, just like we did before, we link it with the link, and then specify the location of that style sheet to link it to the HTML, right? And it's a bit tricky. So inline styles here is actually the style sheet you put in your head.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
And then element style. Okay, so the inline style here is actually the style tag that you put into your head tag. Yes. So you remember you have seen it before. In the head, you just have a style tag, and then you put a lot of style inside, and it will directly be applied in your page, right? And here, element style is go into each element. So for example, H1, then you can say like the color should be red and blah blah blah. So that's basically the difference. And let's just do a little bit of to understand how you can do magic on the web page. So we have the element here. So this is, can you actually see it at all? So this is basically the HTML of a Google page. Yes, I can make it wider actually. Okay. So this is the style. This is the HTML of Google, and then so you can see a bunch of styles here, right? And actually, you can also see that there's an index and some number, and then there's a user agent style sheet, right? So the difference is this user agent style sheet is defined by your browser. So your browser by default defines a set of styles that every page should follow. Otherwise, where does the style come from, right? There has to be some style. If you don't, because if you don't, for example, if you don't write any style, you only write HTML, and then you open that HTML in browser. Somebody is asking a question, right? Okay. So when
Oh, sorry, that's me.
so when you
don't write a CSS.
When you don't when you don't write the CSS and you only write the HTML and you open that HTML, I mean, you can still see the font has some sort of like size and color, which you never said you wanted, right? That's the browser. That's the browser's work. So it's called user agent style sheet. And then these are the external style sheet. It always tells you the style sheet name and then which line of it. No, it doesn't tell you a line. I don't know what this is. Anyways, so and then you see also on top of it, there's an element.style. That's the element style. So you can actually, for example, I'm just gonna.
Why would you specify it separately, the element style, when you can already put it in the HTML tag? What's the benefit of putting this separately on a CSS and not including it in the HTML tag itself?
You usually don't, but like, so for example, back to the specificity, if you put those style directly on your element, I mean, that will be called actually also inline style, but like just to distinguish, in HTML and CSS context, inline style means the style sheet within your head. But for example, in later on, you will learn about like React JavaScript, and in that context, inline style is the style you put on the element. Just to say, like, there's a difference. And you want to, so the styles you directly put on your element has like the high, okay, not highest, but very high specificity. So you will definitely overwrite whatever you put in your style sheet. Of course, that's not something you should always do, but like later on when you learn about like more JavaScript and React, it sometimes happens. You want to be able to, for example, like toggle some like color and whatever with JavaScript, and that's where you need it. Yes? Yeah. So okay, let's just maybe select so here I just selected I don't know if you have learned this tool yet. You did. Okay. So basically, like if in the browser, if you press F12, I don't know if it's always the case, but like at least Chrome, you press 12, you will call out this tool. It's called Dev tool. And then yes. And then if you use the arrow, and then you can see that like I'm like browsing all the elements like this way, and I can select it if I just click on it. So here I just select on this HTML, this div, yeah, and then on this div you can see there's like some styles, and what you can do to override it with element style is that I can just say, oh, salmon is the color, yes. So you see, I just changed this color into salmon. Of course, I can also say font size 24 pixel, and then just become 24 pixel. So, and then you see that the style just got inserted into the element. So this is the element style. Have you seen it? So if I remove both of them, there's nothing inside. Okay, let me just directly remove like this way. God damn it. Come on. No, it's fine. I just need to. Okay, so you see, there's nothing here in the style. And then if I just add it, then you will be put into this style attribute. So this is the element style.
Change in the div.
Mm-hmm.
Where, okay, so this particular element already has an ID.
Mm-hmm.
So why would you not change it in the ID and change it in the element.style?
Again, so if you do it this way, usually because you don't want, you don't have access to your style sheet because you're already in the code. So for example, like in when you start learning JavaScript, sometimes you want to toggle some color. You cannot change your, I mean, you can. Okay, but sometimes you want to add some style, but you don't want to,
If you want to do faster.
So you don't know how to override your own style. But then you are very sure if you just put this style with on top of this element, you're definitely gonna override something you put in your style sheet. It's not even about like styling. It's about like this, how to do it more efficiently with JavaScript, for example. It can be any reason. I haven't thought of that, but there are some cases you need to use the element style to achieve some results because this has almost the highest specificity.
And with elements, so you cannot find, you can, but it is so, it takes so much time to allocate some, for example, classes or
yeah, so
IDs.
basically my question is, with this div,
yeah.
there is an ID. When you made the change in the element.style, it didn't change the color for Danske and Ferroskip. It only changed the color for Google offered in.
Good reason. Good question. Sorry.
So
there is
also because there is some specific ID, and that's why it's doing a style and doing some other stuff where maybe that's a pseudo element and it has a hover and has some color. And that's why it's not changing the entire color of the element style. But then how can you make sure that if you want to change the color of the entire div, then if you put in the element style, then it's not going to change for the entire div?
It's completely a different issue here. Remember we talked about inheritance, right? And I said, if you don't have some style and your parents have it, then you will just grab it from parents. But if you do have that style, your style will override your inherited style, correct? So if we look at these two anchor tag and then the style, what do you see?
Same.
They have color. They have color. Yeah. So if I do color here, and it changed this one, but it didn't change these two anchor tag because the anchor tag doesn't need to inherit the parent because they have their own style.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's what I said. But then div meaning it will change everything for itself, but it will not inherit for the child.
You will, because this Google offered in is a child of this div. But
what about the A tag? Is that also not the child of the div?
They are child, but they have their own style. They have their own color defined here. So they don't need to inherit. So it's like you have a car, so you don't need to inherit your dad's car. You just use your own car. But if you don't have that car, then you need to inherit your dad's car. Does that make sense? So if, okay, let's see, let's make it this way. So if I would just remove the color for this anchor tag, there's something else that I need to, what else I need to override? Hello, Simon. So anchor tag is a little bit different because it has this. Yeah, it has its own. Okay, let's make a different. Okay, let me just add a div here so it's easier to understand. So I'm just gonna,
making it
oh, it's totally
complicated,
fine.
But,
it's totally
it
fine.
will
I'm
show
very
you
glad you're
how to-
asking question.
You can change for the link, but you should give it class and change it after that.
A para. Okay, so I just added a paragraph into this div, right? And so it inherits the color, but I can also do, this will change everything. Let me just give it class. Okay, I just gave it class, so I'm just gonna, so you see, this paragraph becomes blue, and it didn't inherit the parent's color, salmon, but because it has its own color.
Because you specified it.
I don't need to specify like this para. It's just like if I do P, then the browser will find all the P that doesn't have style and then apply it, and it will be more confusing. That's why I added this para. But the point is like it has its own style. Not it has its own style. It has its own relevant attribute. So it doesn't need to inherit. Yes, yes. But if it when it doesn't, then you will inherit. You see. So this is inheritance. Yes.
But then in case of overwriting this, then you will have to just remove the specific attribute that you have provided in order for it to inherit from the parent.
If you want to override, I mean, usually when you want to override it, you don't remove stuff, you add stuff. Because like there's adding new things is much easier than removing old things because you don't.
If you had to override this by mentioning it in element style, what would you do in order to inherit without removing from p.para the specific?
Then you don't inherit anymore because if you don't remove, you definitely cannot inherit.
Yeah, so that's what I mentioned. So in order for it to inherit from the parent, it will have to remove its own specific attribute already that it has. So that it can inherit from the parent.
Yes, right? That is correct. Okay. It's just like in real world, you will not do that. Because when your page is online, you cannot just say, okay, I'm just gonna go there and remove that line because you're facing a huge style sheet again. So instead of like removing stuff, I mean, this isn't. I mean, usually like okay, in many companies, like their CSS style sheet, it's a mess. So you don't want to remove stuff because whenever you remove anything, you have no idea what is the impact. So you add stuff. That's why the style sheet is usually the one who grows like exponentially if they don't have any like methodology to plan how to write style. So you always add and add and add to override the previous ones. I'm not saying like this is like encouraged behavior, but this is the reality.
In this particular situation, if you had to do that, then what would be the solution?
I will add style. So for example, here, what I would do is I will add again.
For the same.
You see? Yes.
Attribute.
Yes.
Okay.
Now you look at it, it's like they are next to each other, but it's not in the real world they're not. Yeah. So you see that this is where the cascade come in place. I added the style later than that one, so this one takes effect. Got it? Yeah, if it's the same specificity, then the one comes later overrides the one comes earlier. So that's the cascade.
When we write the code, we write from the top, and whatever we add goes at the bottom. So here, is it opposite?
Yeah, it's opposite. Here, so when you look at the dev tool, it's always like the most generic comes first, and then more and more specific you can see. Yeah. Okay.
So now it's clear.
Okay. That's oh, we still have time. Yes. Okay, now we can continue. I really want you guys to do some exercise, but I don't know how long it will take. Yana, have you done with that semantic one? can you post it in the? Okay. So what I want you to do. So remember the file you downloaded for the first exercise, right? You copy paste Yana's code. Where is it? Okay. So this one. You copy the Yana's the file and just paste it, overwrite your own HTML in that file. And what you need to do is like you try to style. You already have a style sheet, but they don't have the correct selector because you change the HTML structure, so the selector does not work anymore. So that's why every one of you have different page with the same HTML. So what you need to do is, where's that? Here. What you need to do is change your style sheet that's already there. You already have all the style, and change the selector. So it will eventually become like this.
Okay, I don't think I know this follow. If I just directly copy the code from what Yana has posted, will it change to this automatically?
No, you will not, because your selector, your style sheet selector are not selecting the correct.
So we also need to change the CSS.
You don't change the HTML except for copy paste. You don't change the HTML anymore. So you use Yana's HTML, and then you go to the style sheet to change the selector. So you select the right thing.
Address.
Hmm?
You mean you should add this.
You don't add anything. You just change.
Address them to the HTML.
Yes, you try to change it, and so you select the right. Yes. If you have questions, just ask.
Okay, and then I should just add the link to my external CSS.
You have already linked it.
But when we copy her code does not have.
Then you just add the copy paste what he posted. Yeah.
And then nothing else too.
And then
the selector.
Yeah, and then go to the CSS style sheet to change to make the selector select the correct thing. Because for your previous HTML, it's selecting the correct thing because there's no semantic HTML added, right? There's no extra tags, but you added tags. That's why the selector are not selecting the correct thing. And then that's where you want what you want to achieve. Yeah, you don't need to add any styles. You just need to change the selector. Yes, and you need to copy Yana's Yeah, you just need to achieve for that. So did you copy Yana's I told that island. Okay, this is island, okay? It is work. So first of all, you can link your style sheet, just like you did. Yeah, the Yana's code doesn't have a style sheet. Yes. So you link that, just copy paste again that link. And then what you need to do is so your style sheet will not select correct HTML. So HTML change. So you need to change the CSS file. Okay. So you can you don't change the style, you just change the selector. Yes.
Добавить здесь. Да. Открыть. Да.
Вам нужно добавить CSS и добавить соответствующий.
Это.
Ну да, ну соответствующий. Оно не все будет работать, потому что я же изменила файл.
Да.
Оно и вам нужно это все отключать, потому что вы, наверное, не сможете посмотреть.
Уже открыть.
Yes, I'm coming.
Это мне показывает. Это показывает.
Okay, so let's open the folder first. So you
да?
download the thing.
Браузер. Окей. Итак, давай я его сохраняю.
Okay, so what you need to do is results and then just paste it in your HTML. That's the first thing. That's because the list is on the side. Maybe I should change the. Okay, doesn't matter. If it works, it works.
Yeah, I just compared it to what I had before. My case dogs.
So you need to. So you need. So can you guys open the page? Yes. Yeah. Yes, I think I should have changed the CSS. I think it's correct. No, because so Yana, you structure the HTML well. When they structure the HTML, they see different things. So I felt like, yeah, so because the way they structure is incorrect. But the thing is, like, the CSS actually is doing the correct thing. If you structure the HTML, it's correct. So, yeah, so basically they're already done. Once they copy your code. Yeah, actually, I will have an answer. I think the problem is not getting the same. But you have class to this one. You don't, right? You can try to go and open this. Try that. Can you show me? After main section. Yeah. After main, yeah. Section. Progress.
Yeah, but should this section also be
So yeah, we talk about the CSS sections. It can be ID, it can be class, it can be element. Yeah, so for the is element. So if you don't do the class, you just reference the select the color, it's the same. So all these.
no?
What do you mean?
The favorite colors has to be a
Yeah. Yeah. Because you don't have to like the classes. You don't have to. Yes.
I forgot section, you just open the after main and before
Always use the element. It's just like if you have several the same thing, for example, like you would have a div, you have like n div.
Yeah, so
div
now we don't
color
need to change it.
color, no, just div. Just the element div. You can also say color red.
What
And then
about this
your n div will be red.
Is there a PR of the distance why it's broken and got down?
Yes, yes. Yes. By the way,
According to yours, after BY, there is a break and this is got down.
Maybe, but maybe also you can change the size.
Yeah, no, it shouldn't have different
so you don't need to worry about it. Yeah. Don't worry.
It's the yeah.
So it can be, but I think it was the right structure. It doesn't have any it was
I know this is called, I did it, I know about this, but I think I did it somewhere in my course because this is my own. So when I actually try to increase or reduce my browser, it tries to change the size because I gave it a specific size and wanted to do this transition. Yeah. What was this that I had done?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so basically you added one record.
Yeah, but you know,
What do you think?
Well, you
this time
yeah, you can ask him. Yeah, you can add that. Yeah, so
No, I'm doing something on that.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, you guys, there's one nice error in your HTML. The article was got wrong. Yeah, so if you correct that, you should be ready to go. So that's a hidden bomb. Okay.
Yeah, but that's because it's within the
This is a I mean, so if you have multiple like articles, then you will again they can change the section, but don't worry about that because this is already expensive enough.
I already have
Yeah,
Let's try the ticket. Let's see which
You don't need to care about this. This only says like both article and section has this type. So if you don't have section, it's fine. Right? Because it's like comma. Comma means I want to select all these things and then you check all these things. But if you do it down, it's a comma. Then it's like select the section and our game. Okay, I don't have much time. 10 minutes left. Okay, guys. I believe you all have success. So let's try to cover the last bit of information. Attention. Okay, guys. Are we all here? You have a bell, just ding, 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 and then they know to go back. Okay, are they coming back?
On the way back. Yeah.
Where's my? Okay, guys, quickly come back. We don't have much time. Yes. Yeah, online class. Guys, quickly.
Yeah, this starship I took, this HTML code. This one too is inside.
Okay, are we all here?
Stuck. Download it, copy it.
That's the last question. Then when we finish in the class today, you can ask that kind of question. So, okay, guys, let's cover the last bit of information. So it's about actually very important. It almost decides if you can get a job or not at all. Very important. Pay a lot of attention. It's about box model. So anybody knows about box model? Just raise your hand. Don't you need to explain? Okay, the coverage is not that high. So, okay. So when we look at the web page, you most of the time look at like very funky stuff, like different shape and then things just kind of coming out of like nowhere. But in fact, under the hood, everything in the web world, in the browser world, it's a box. So how do I explain it? So if you would inspect stuff, right, you will see it always like just kind of come out with like a rectangle kind of thing, right? It's basically everything is a rectangle. You see that? Okay, let's maybe find any website that has that's more irregular. Okay, what is the most design-ish? Scribe? Ah, Stripe.com?
It's a payment gateway.
Ooh, someone's working in the finance world. I guess.
No.
Okay.
Also in any different service-oriented or a product-oriented company,
Okay.
you would need payments.
Yeah. So if you look at the page, okay, let me just minimize this dev tool. Okay, so if you look at the page, you look at things just coming out of nowhere and different shapes and completely random, right? In fact, under the hood, it's still squares. For example, so let's just like call out our dev tool. So you see like, so you see, so this section is actually a huge like a rectangle with some like paddings here and there and margins here and there. And then this one too. And this is a whole, this is like a whole section. It's also a square. And then here you can see that as well. And then here is like different level of different squares. Wow, this is to the detail. Look at this. 2 small squares that is like, that's rotating. So here, I think it's like kind of like already give you some kind of idea. Like, so if you would inspect a web page, you will see a lot of squares here and there. And every one of them is a box. And every box has its own kind of like personality. No, box model. So what is a box model? So how do you decide the size of a box? So if all of them are box, how do we decide the size? What is included in the box?
What is included in a box?
How do you so for example, how do you decide the size of a box?
The space.
So what would it include?
The width and the height. So it will include the space that you need from the top, the bottom, and the left and the right.
Margin and padding.
Okay. So basically,
firstly you will give a border so you at least know where it is, and then you can figure out the default size, and then you can go ahead and make the changes to it.
Okay, so I don't know how much preparation you have done, but like there are like some links, videos that was included in the preparation, and one of the video actually talk about how does your browser give you the page. What is the steps it takes?
Yeah.
So all the so with the website, you basically have your HTML, you have your CSS, you have scripts, and these are all code basically, right? And they come from somewhere, a server, let's say. And so the browser will fetch the HTML, CSS in order to actually render that page, right? And then it gets the code, it gets the HTML, so it knows about the structure, and then it gets different assets like your photo, your pictures, and your font, and blah blah blah. And then it goes into called like layout phase. In the layout phase, so the browser already knows the structure of your HTML, and it also knows some layout related CSS, which is like the margin, your like the padding, your like positioning, and blah blah blah. And so it knows about this information. Then you calculate. It does the computation. So where should this element to be, and how much space it takes, and then goes into the last paint. And in the painting phase, then it applies all the like other attributes. For example, like your color and your transition and blah blah blah, everything. So within this layout phase, it starts kind of like looking at your HTML structure. So it knows your document flow, and it knows the content of your HTML tag. So for example, like this is a content, this is a tag, this is the leaf of your HTML tag, right? The text. So if it's just for example, like if it's a div, and then it takes as much space as it wants. So that's the first like level of like calculation. And then see if you have like, for example, like width and height, and as so your width will define like how much space it takes, but still it doesn't define like for example, like so you have a width of a box. Imagine that you have a width of a box, and how do you know how much space the content should take? You use the width, for example, 400 pixel, and you look at if you have defined the margin. No, that's not, margin is not another thing. You look at if you have defined the border.
Yeah.
And then you look at if you define the padding, and then you just minus those values, and then you will have like the leftover, the remaining space, and you put the content in. And except for this one, so you have defined the width, then you also have the margin that kind of define the outer box, like the total space it actually takes. So this is the basic box model. You have your text content. Outside of text content, you put on the border, and outside of the padding, and then you outside of the padding you put on the border, and then outside the border you put on the margin. So that's the whole that's the whole box. That's the complete box structuring. So if we would look at a box, like a random box here, okay, let me find the box. They only have, here, okay, here. So the blue part is the content. The green part is the padding. And the orange part is the margin. And we can't, there's no border here, so you cannot see. But if there is border, you will be, actually, I don't know what color it will be.
It will be like yellow.
Okay, let's see. Let's look at this one. Computed. Okay, here. Oh God. What happened? Oh, here. So if whenever you inspect an HTML element, you will have this box in your dev tool. So you see, blue one, the content, and then green one, the padding, and there is border. So you see on the left, there's a 5 pixels of a border. And it actually didn't show much of a color, but like you can see it from here. And then the margin. So this is a box model.
But the margin is above the border.
No, so everything we just talked about, the padding, the border, the margin, they have 4 parts on top of the of a box, because the box has like 4 edges, right? So every direction you will have its own padding, border, and margin.
Okay.
Yeah. So just like this box, you can see it.
They go in an anti-clock direction. In default mode, if you don't specify like a margin top or a margin, it will just go in an
you will just go everywhere. So if you say margins 10 pixel, you will apply to 4 margins. Yeah, unless you just specify each of it. So that's the basic box model. And then the default, so the way to calculate the size is also, there's also a difference. So this is the way, this is the basic one. We call it content box. So it based on the content and then add everything on top. It basically, so the content is the base size, and then you add the border, the padding, the border, and then the margin to calculate how big how the dimension of this box is. But there's also another one. It's called a box size. It's called a border box, and then you will include the border. So within the border is the base size. Then you add and then you add the margin on top to calculate the size. So example, we have time? Oh, we don't have time. Should I just send you guys the docs to read?
No, we can spend 5 minutes more. It's really interesting.
I sent it. You send it?
I mean, that's for me, but
Okay, so here actually you have like very good. So this is what we just talked about, the content, and then you have a padding, then you have border and margin. This is the basic box model. And okay, I think there's some kind of example here. So here we have two boxes, right? I use the standard box model. So the standard box model is content box. And then the other boxes, I use the alternative box model. So the standard one, so you see like these two, so they both have class name box, correct? And then we see there's a box class style here, and it says the padding, the margin, the width, and the height. But the thing is like, so, and then the alternative is a class is applied to the second box, and it only says box size in border box, right? But you see like the render effect is that like the second one is much smaller than the first one. The reason is exactly what we just talked about, like how you what is the base size to calculate with. So the standard one is the content box. We said like the content box is based on the content size and adding on top of like the padding, the border, and the margin. So if we would look at, so the width is 300. What should be this whole size of this box? So the padding is 40, margin is 40, and border is 5. So can someone quickly calculate the size of this border, this box? You have width 300 pixel, and then the box sizing is content box, and you have border 5 pixel, you have padding 40, margin 40.
85.
465. Let's look at it. I mean, I actually haven't calculated myself, so I'm just giving you the question. So you see here, it's a very interesting actually. So again, we look at our box model here. It's 300 by 150, right? And then the padding added 40. So see, and then border added 5 again, and then margin added 40. So in total is, I don't know, so some 390, 80, 160, 170 by 300 plus 300 is 475. So the width is 475. And then height you can calculate yourself. So that's the.
I don't think I still followed your calculation. Can you have 40 on each side?
Yeah. So because there are two border, two padding, two margin. So you need to always multiply by 2. So the base size is 300, and if we add the padding is 300 plus 40 plus 40. So then 380. Yeah, and then add the border is 380 plus 5 is 390. And 390, add the margin, 390 plus 40 plus 40. Okay, maybe I was wrong, sorry. But you get the idea. I was wrong. God damn it. Yeah, so you basically just add all the way out. And so we now know the standard box model, and then we have another alternative box model, which is the border box. And like I said, it's based on the border as the base. So okay, let's just look at it. So if we would look at this one, it's like the width is 300, but you see the content becomes 210. Why is that?
Because it's counting from the border, and from the border to the content,
yes,
it's making a total of the size and dividing it.
Yes, so basically, when you define the width to the content box, you directly define the content's width and height. But when you define the width of a border box, you define the width within the border. So everything within the border. So
in the alternate box sizing, we did not mention anywhere that it's 300 pixels. So how
it's here. Both of these box has a class. So yes, okay, maybe you cannot see. Let me just. Can you see? So they both have class name box. So they both have the same style, except for the second box has another alternative class, which only defined the box sizing as border box, right?
And that's why it is overwriting the property of the box.
It is. Yes, it is, because the default is content box. So when you define it as border box, you will override the default box sizing. Yeah. So how to calculate the box sizing for border box is basically if you define the width, then the width will be split into content, border, and padding. So here we can see. So 5 plus 40 plus 210 plus 40 plus 5, it will be like 300. And then you add a margin in, it will become the final size of this box.
Margin in? No, but if it's the border box, then the margin will be calculated.
Yeah. I mean, you just add the margin, then you will get the final size of the whole box. I'm not saying the within. I'm saying like how the browser calculates the size of a box within the document flow. So that's how that's how it's calculated.
So when you put this border box, whether it's in a div or it's in one of your semantic sections, it's going to, from that line, it's going to start calculating the margin first, whether you do the border box or you do the normal standard box option.
A very important thing, I need to repeat it. Semantic HTML is also HTML. You don't need to like see them differently. And if you put box sizing on one of your div, what happens is inheritance comes into place. Everything under that div, within that div, the child will also have this different box sizing. Remember that. And then how you calculate, you just apply it into every of the wrapping box.
Every block element.
Yeah. Yes. Mm-hmm. Because inline elements doesn't have like its own size. It just depends on how much space, how much content you have. Yes.
Calculate the margin inside the 300 pixels.
No. No.
Border box means border, starting from the border.
Border box means you're starting from border. The margin is outside.
It is calculating the margin, but from the border 300 pixel and outside.
Outside of margin.
Outside the border.
Okay, can you repeat and louder? We're not talking about the page size. We're talking about each box. So we just mentioned that everything on your web page is a box. And then how does the browser calculate the box size? Because it's just this much of a space, right? So you need to decide how to arrange stuff and how much space it takes and how to kind of show it, right? So we are talking about how you as a browser see the size of each box. And then there are two ways to calculate the box. One is the default way, which is the content box. Let's see it as an alternative option. So the content box, basically, if you define the content box, if you add a width as an attribute, then the width will be only pointing to the content. It's like the inner part. And then you will add whatever you add, as the padding, the border, the margin, all together to calculate the final size of how much space you need to take on the page. and then on the other hand, the border box, that's another option, how the browser calculates. Then you will, and then you say the same size with 400 pixels. Then you will, this 400 pixel will not be for the content, the most inner part. It will be including the padding and the border. So, and then the browser will only need to add the margin to this whole box, then it knows. Yeah, can you repeat? Yeah, you might not have enough. For example, if you change the box sizing, you might not have enough space for something. So if you change that, so when you write the HTML CSS, sometimes you reset everything. We know that browser has its own kind of default styles, right? So this content box sizing content box is one of the default style. So sometimes you reset it. You say, for example, HTML, comma, body, and then you just put a box sizing border box in, just to kind of like override the default behavior. And why do we do that? Because it's easier to calculate for us. Because when you say width 300 pixel, you know, except for the margin, it's 300 pixel. It's gonna be 300 pixel. But with the default behavior, you need to also, well, I need to multiply, I need to minus the border, minus the padding, then I know how much my content would be. So that's the difference. Okay, so we will have some homework post on the channel, and you need to do the homework before our next class, and then the earlier the better, because then our for example, Yana would have time to look at the homework, and other mentors would have time to look at the homework. Don't be the last minute hero. There's no fire, but like someone might not have time for your homework review. And then if you have questions, you can ask Yana, you can ask me, you can ask. I will find out who else are helping the class, and then you can always pin them or DM them to ask questions. Yeah.
So is the homework going to only contain what we have learned, or something extra as well?
Only what we have learned, but like different. Not that ask you to do the same thing, of course. So I have faith in you. After this class, you can do your homework.
Where do we have to submit our homework? Yeah.
Good question. I will post the way you should submit your homework later. Okay. So far, just put it on your local machine. Just like what we did, like you just save your HTML and CSS on your local machine, and later on I will post how you should submit your homework. Okay.
So we don't have to do anything to put it up in GitHub?
We do, but I haven't taught the Git part.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So if you know how to do it, if you know how to do it, you can do it. But otherwise, you just wait for the tutorial.
With the information that you had sent for us to read, when we go to GitHub and already create the login and everything, it tells you how to create a repository and how to put up the things over there.
Yeah.
So do you also upload your HTML and CSS code in the similar form, like creating a repository over there?
Yeah.
But it does not have to be in the master, but it has to be in the branch. Is that how we do it?
Good question. I don't know. I need to ask as well. So far, if you have time to do the homework already, just do it locally. Ignore how you submit.
Let us know how
yes.
to do it.
Correct. Yes. Sorry? Yeah, we do have it on the same GitHub repo. You will see the reading part. Yeah. I have no idea. I haven't looked at that yet.
Actually show where exactly on the GitHub we have our reading material?
I will send in the channel.
I think you already sent it. I've
Mhm.
opened it, but it's not showing exactly to which week and how we need to follow.
I will send exactly. I will send exactly what you need to read and the homework for the week, so you don't need to worry about it. And again, you good to have questions, and then I will answer it. I mean, not answer it, but I will give the information on the channel, so you will all have it.
Yeah.